Meanwhile, in other parts like deeds deserved memorial, where the might of Gabriel fought, and with fierce ensigns pierced the deep array of Moloch, furious king, who him defied, and at his chariot wheels to drag him bound threatened. Not from the Holy One of heaven refrained his tongue blasphemous, but anon, down cloven to the waist with shattered arms and uncouth pain, fled bellowing. On each wing, Uriel and Raphael, his vaunting foe, though huge and in a rock of diamond armed, vanquished Adramelech and Asmodai, two potent thrones that to be less than gods disdained, but meaner thoughts learned in their flight, mangled with ghastly wounds through plate and mail. Nor stood unmindful Abdiel to annoy the atheist crew, but with redoubled blow Ariel and Arioch, and the violence of Ramiel scorched and blasted, overthrew. I might relate of thousands and their names eternize here on earth, but those elect angels, contented with their fame in heaven, seek not the praise of men. The other sort, in might though wondrous and in acts of war, nor of renown less eager, yet by doom cancelled from heaven and sacred memory, nameless in dark oblivion, let them dwell. For strength from truth divided, and from just, illaudable, naught merits but dispraise and ignominy. Yet to glory aspires vainglorious, and through infamy seeks fame. Therefore eternal silence be their doom. And now, their mightiest quelled, the battle swerved, with many an inroad gored, deformed rout entered and foul disorder. All the ground with shivered armour strown, and on a heap chariot and charioteer lay overturned, and fiery foaming steeds. What stood, recoiled or wearied, through the faint satanic host, defensive scarce, or with pale fear surprised, then first with fear surprised and sense of pain, fled ignominious, to such evil brought by sin of disobedience, till that hour not liable to fear or flight or pain. Far otherwise the inviolable saints, in cubic phalanx firm, advanced entire, invulnerable, impenetrably armed. Such high advantages their innocence gave them above their foes, not to have sinned, not to have disobeyed. In fight they stood unwearied, unobnoxious to be pained by wound, though from their place by violence moved. Now night her course began, and over heaven, inducing darkness, grateful truce imposed, and silence on the odious din of war. Under her cloudy covert both retired, victor and vanquished. On the foughten field, Michael and his angels, prevalent encamping, placed in guard their watches round, cherubic waving fires. On the other part, Satan, with his rebellious, disappeared, far in the dark dislodged. And void of rest, his potentates to council called by night, and in the midst, thus undismayed, began. Oh, now in danger tried, now known in arms not to be overpowered, companions dear, found worthy, not of liberty alone, to mean pretence, but what we more affect, honour, dominion, glory, and renown, who have sustained one day in doubtful fight, and if one day, why not eternal days? What heaven's Lord had powerfulest to send against us from about his throne, and judge sufficient to subdue us to his will, but proves not so. Then fallible, it seems, of future we may deem him, though till now omniscient thought. True is, less firmly armed, some disadvantage we endured, and pain, till now not known, but known as soon contemned. Since now we find this our imperial form incapable of mortal injury, imperishable, and, though pierced with wound, soon closing, and by native vigour healed. Of evil then so small as easy think the remedy. Perhaps more valid arms, Weapons more violent, when next we meet, may serve to better us and worse our foes, or equal what between us made the odds, in nature none. If other hidden cause left them superior, while we can preserve unhurt our minds and understanding sound, due search and consultation will disclose. He sat, and in the assembly next upstood Nisroch of principalities the prime. As one he stood escaped from cruel fight, sore toiled, his riven arms to havoc hewn, and cloudy in his aspect, thus answering, spake. Deliverer from new lords, leader to free enjoyment of our right as gods. Yet hard for gods and too unequal work we find against unequal arms to fight in pain, against unpained, impassive, from which evil ruin must needs ensue. For what avails valour or strength, though matchless, quelled with pain, which all subdues and makes remiss the hands of mightiest? Sense of pleasure we may well spare out of life, perhaps, and not repine, but live content, which is the calmest life. But pain is perfect misery, the worst of evils, and excessive overturns all patience. He who therefore can invent with what more forcible we may offend our yet unwounded enemies, or arm ourselves with like defence, to me deserves no less than for deliverance what we owe. Whereto, with look composed, Satan replied, Not uninvented, that which thou aright believest so main to our success I bring. Which of us who beholds the bright surface of this ethereous mould whereon we stand, this continent of spacious heaven adorned with plant, fruit, flower, ambrosial, gems, and gold, whose eye so superficially surveys these things, as not to mind from whence they grow deep underground, materials dark and crude, of spirituous and fiery spume, till, touched with heaven's ray and tempered, they shoot forth so beauteous opening to the ambient light. These, in their dark nativity, the deep shall yield us, pregnant with infernal flame, which, into hollow engines, long and round, thick rammed at the other bore, with touch of fire dilated and infuriate, shall send forth from far with thundering noise among our foes such implements of mischief as shall dash to pieces and o'erwhelm whatever stands adverse, that they shall fear we have disarmed the thunderer of his only dreaded bolt. Nor long shall be our labour. Yet ere dawn effect shall end our wish. Meanwhile, revive, abandon fear, to strength and counsel joined, think nothing hard, much less to be despaired. He ended, and his words their drooping cheer enlightened, and their languished hope revived. The invention all admired, and each how he to be the inventor missed, so easy it seemed, once found, which yet unfound most would have thought impossible. Yet haply of thy race in future days, if malice should abound, some one intent on mischief or inspired with devilish machination might devise like instrument to plague the sons of men for sin, on war and mutual slaughter bent. Forthwith, from counsel to the work they flew, none arguing stood. Innumerable hands were ready. In a moment up they turned wide the celestial soil, and saw beneath the originals of nature in their crude conception. Sulphurous and nitrous foam they found. They mingled, and with subtle art concocted and adusted, they reduced to blackest grain, and into store conveyed. Part hidden veins digged up, nor hath this earth entrails unlike, of mineral and stone, whereof to found their engines and their balls of missive ruin. Part incentive reed provide, pernicious with one touch to fire. So, all ere dayspring, under conscious night, secret they finished, and in order set, with silent circumspection, unespied. Now when fair morn orient in heaven appeared, uprose the victor angels, and to arms the matin trumpet sung. In arms they stood of golden panoply, refulgent host, soon banded. Others from the dawning hills looked round, and scouts each coast light-armed scour, each quarter to descry the distant foe, where lodged, or whither fled, or if for fight in motion or in halt. Him soon they met, under spread ensigns moving nigh in slow but firm battalion. Back with speediest sail, Raphael, of cherubim the swiftest wing, came flying, and in mid-air aloud thus cried, "Arm! Warriors, arm for fight! The foe at hand, whom fled we thought, will save us long pursuit this day. Fear not his flight. So thick a cloud he comes, and settled in his face I see sad resolution and secure. Let each his adamantine coat gird well, and each fit well his helm, gripe fast his orbed shield, borne even or high. For this day will pour down, if I conjecture aught, no drizzling shower, but rattling storm of arrows barbed with fire." So warned he then, aware themselves, and soon in order quit of all impediment. Instant without disturb they took alarm, and onward moved embattled, when, behold, not distant far, with heavy pace, the foe, approaching gross and huge, in hollow cube, training his devilish enginery, impaled on every side with shadowing squadrons deep, to hide the fraud. At interview both stood a while, but suddenly at head appeared Satan, and thus was heard commanding loud, "Vanguard to right and left, the front unfold, that all may see, who hate us, how we seek peace and composure, and with open breast stand ready to receive them, if they like our overture, and turn not back perverse. But that I doubt. However, witness heaven, heaven, witness thou anon, while we discharge freely our part. Ye who appointed stand, do as you have in charge, and briefly touch what we propound, and loud, that all may hear." So, scoffing in ambiguous words, he scarce had ended, when to right and left the front divided, and to either flank retired, which to our eyes discovered, new and strange, a triple mounted row of pillars laid on wheels, for like to pillars most they seemed, or hollowed bodies made of oak or fir, with branches lopped, in wood or mountain felled. Brass, iron, stony mould, had not their mouths with hideous orifice gaped on us wide, portending hollow truce. At each behind a seraph stood, and in his hand a reed stood waving, tipped with fire, while we, suspense, collected stood within our thoughts, amused, not long. For sudden all at once their reeds put forth, and to a narrow vent applied with nicest touch. Immediate in a flame, but soon obscured with smoke, all heaven appeared. From those deep-throated engines belched, whose roar embowelled with outrageous noise the air, and all her entrails tore, disgorging foul their devilish glut, chained thunderbolts and hail of iron globes, which, on the victor host levelled with such impetuous fury smote, that whom they hit, none on their feet might stand, though standing else as rocks, but down they fell by thousands, angel on archangel rolled. The sooner for their arms, unarmed, they might have easily as spirits evaded swift by quick contraction or remove, but now foul dissipation followed and forced rout, nor served it to relax their serried files. What should they do? If on they rushed, repulse repeated, and indecent overthrow doubled would render them yet more despised, and to their foes a laughter. For in view stood ranked of seraphim another row, in posture to displode their second tire of thunder. Back, defeated, to return they were abhorred. Satan beheld their plight, and to his mates thus in derision called, "O friends, why come not on these victors proud? Erewhile they fierce were coming, and when we to entertain them fair with open front and breast, What could we more? Propounded terms of composition, straight they changed their minds, flew off, and into strange vagaries fell, as they would dance. Yet for a dance they seemed somewhat extravagant and wild, perhaps for joy of offered peace. But I suppose if our proposals once again were heard, we should compel them to a quick result. To whom thus Belial, in like gamesome mood: Leader, the terms we sent were terms of weight, of hard contents, and full of force urged home, such as we might perceive amused them all, and stumbled many. Who receives them right had need from head to foot well understand. Not understood, this gift they have besides, they show us when our foes walk not upright. So they among themselves in pleasant vein stood scoffing, heightened in their thoughts beyond all doubt of victory. Eternal might to match with their inventions they presumed so easy, and of his thunder made a scorn, and all his host derided, while they stood a while in trouble. But they stood not long. Rage prompted them at length, and found them arms against such hellish mischief fit to oppose. Forthwith, behold the excellence, the power which God hath in his mighty angels placed. Their arms away they threw, and to the hills, for earth hath this variety from heaven of pleasure situate in hill and dale. Light as the lightning glimpse they ran, they flew. From their foundations loosening to and fro, they plucked the seated hills with all their load, rocks, waters, woods, and by the shaggy tops, uplifting, bore them in their hands. Amaze, be sure, and terror seized the rebel host, when coming towards them so dread they saw the bottom of the mountains upward turned, till on those cursed engines triple row they saw them whelmed, and all their confidence under the weight of mountains buried deep. Themselves invaded next, and on their heads main promontories flung, which in the air came shadowing, and oppressed whole legions armed. Their armour helped their harm, crushed in, and bruised into their substance pent, which wrought them pain implacable, and many a dolorous groan. Long struggling underneath, ere they could wind out of such prison, those spirits of purest light, purest at first, now gross by sinning grown. The rest, in imitation, two like arms betook them, and the neighbouring hills uptore. So, hills amid the air encountered hills, hurled to and fro with jaculation dire. That underground they fought in dismal shade, infernal noise. War seemed a civil game to this uproar. Horrid confusion heaped upon confusion rose, and now all heaven had gone to wrack, with ruin overspread. Had not the Almighty Father, where he sits, shrined in his sanctuary of heaven secure, consulting on the sum of things, foreseen this tumult, and permitted all, advised, that his great purpose he might so fulfill, to honour his anointed Son, avenged upon his enemies, and to declare all power on him transferred. Whence to his Son, the assessor of his throne, he thus began. Effulgence of my glory, Son beloved, Son, in whose face invisible is beheld visibly what by deity I am, and in whose hand what by decree I do, second omnipotence. 2 days are past, 2 days as we compute the days of heaven, since Michael and his powers went forth to tame these disobedient. Sore hath been their fight, as likeliest was when two such foes met armed, for to themselves I left them, and thou know'st, equal in their creation they were formed, save what sin hath impaired, which yet hath wrought insensibly, for I suspend their doom. Whence in perpetual fight they needs must last endless, and no solution will be found. War wearied hath performed what war can do, and to disordered rage let loose the reins with mountains as with weapons armed, which makes wild work in heaven, and dangerous to the main. 2 days are therefore past. The 3rd is thine. For thee I have ordained it, and thus far have suffered that the glory may be thine of ending this great war, since none but thou can end it. Into thee such virtue and grace immense I have transfused, that all may know in heaven and hell thy power above compare. And this perverse commotion, governed thus, to manifest thee worthiest to be heir of all things, to be heir and to be king by sacred unction, thy deserved right. Go then, thou mightiest, in thy father's might, ascend my chariot, guide the rapid wheels that shake heaven's basis, bring forth all my war, my bow and thunder, my almighty arms gird on, and sword upon thy puissant thigh, pursue these sons of darkness, drive them out from all heaven's bounds into the utter deep. There let them learn as likes them to despise God, and Messiah his anointed king. He said, and on his son with rays direct shone full. He all his father full expressed ineffably into his face received, and thus the filial Godhead answering spake. O Father, O supreme of heavenly thrones, first, highest, holiest, best, thou always seekst to glorify thy Son, I always thee, as is most just. This I my glory account, my exaltation and my whole delight, that thou in me well pleased declarest thy will fulfilled, which to fulfill is all my bliss. Scepter and power, thy giving, I assume, and gladlier shall resign when in the end thou shalt be all in all, and I in thee forever, and in me all whom thou lovest. But whom thou hatest, I hate, and can put on thy terrors, as I put thy mildness on, image of thee in all things, and shall soon, armed with thy might, rid heaven of these rebelled, to their prepared ill mansion, driven down to chains of darkness and the undying worm, that from thy just obedience could revolt, whom to obey is happiness entire. Then shall thy saints unmixed, and from the impure far separate, circling thy holy mount, unfeigned hallelujahs to thee sing, hymns of high praise, and I among them chief. So said he, o'er his scepter bowing, rose from the right hand of glory where he sat, and the third sacred morn began to shine, dawning through heaven. Forth rushed with whirlwind sound the chariot of paternal deity, flashing thick flames, wheel within wheeled undrawn, itself instinct with spirit, but convoyed by 4 cherubic shapes, 4 faces each had, wondrous, as with stars their bodies all, and wings were set with eyes the wheels of beryl, and careering fires between. Over their heads a crystal firmament, whereon a sapphire throne, inlaid with pure amber and colours of the showery arch. He, in celestial panoply, all armed of radiant Urim, work divinely wrought, ascended. At his right hand Victory sat eagle-winged. Beside him hung his bow and quiver with 3-bolted thunder stored, and from about him fierce effusion rolled of smoke and bickering flame and sparkles dire. Attended with 10,000 saints he onward came. Far off his coming shone, and 20,000, I their number heard, chariots of God, half on each hand, were seen. He on the wings of cherub rode sublime, on the crystalline sky in sapphire throned, illustrious far and wide, but by his own first seen. Them unexpected joy surprised, when the great ensign of Messiah blazed aloft by angels borne, his sign in heaven. Under whose conduct Michael soon reduced his army, circumfused on either wing, under their head embodied all in one. Before him power divine his way prepared. At his command the uprooted hills retired each to his place. They heard his voice and went obsequious. Heaven his wonted face renewed, and with fresh flowerets hill and valley smiled. This saw his hapless foes, but stood obdured, and to rebellious fight rallied their powers, insensate, hope conceiving from despair. In heavenly spirits could such perverseness dwell? But to convince the proud what signs avail? or wonders move the obdurate to relent. They, hardened more by what might most reclaim, grieving to see his glory at the sight, took envy, and, aspiring to his height, stood re-embattled fierce by force or fraud, weening to prosper, and at length prevail against God and Messiah, or to fall in universal ruin last. And now to final battle drew, disdaining flight or faint retreat, when the great Son of God to all his host on either hand thus spake. Stand still in bright array, ye saints, here stand, ye angels armed. This day from battle rest. Faithful hath been your warfare, and of God accepted, fearless in his righteous cause. And as ye have received, so have ye done, invincibly. But of this cursed crew the punishment to other hand belongs. Vengeance is his, or whose he sole appoints. Number to this day's work is not ordained, nor multitude. Stand only and behold God's indignation on these godless poured by me. Not you, but me they have despised, yet envied. Against me is all their rage, because the Father, to whom in heaven's supreme kingdom and power and glory appertains, hath honoured me according to his will. Therefore to me their doom he hath assigned, that they may have their wish, to try with me in battle which the stronger proves, they all, or I alone, against them. Since by strength they measure all, of other excellence not emulous nor care who them excels, nor other strife with them do I vouchsafe. So spake the Son, and into terror changed his countenance, too severe to be beheld, and full of wrath, bent on his enemies. At once the four spread out their starry wings with dreadful shade contiguous, and the orbs of his fierce chariot rolled as with the sound of torrent floods or of a numerous host. He on his impious foes right onward drove, gloomy as night. Under his burning wheels the steadfast empyrean shook throughout, all but the throne itself of God. Full soon among them he arrived, in his right hand grasping 10,000 thunders, which he sent before him, such as in their souls infixed plagues. They astonished, all resistance lost, all courage down their idle weapons dropped. O'er shields and helms and helmet heads he rode, of thrones and mighty seraphim prostrate, that wished the mountains now might be again thrown on them as a shelter from his ire. Nor less on either side tempestuous fell his arrows from the fourfold-visaged four, distinct with eyes, and from the living wheels distinct alike, with multitude of eyes. One spirit in them ruled, and every eye glared lightning, and shot forth pernicious fire among the accursed, that withered all their strength, and of their wonted vigour left them drained, exhausted, spiritless, afflicted, fallen. Yet half his strength he put not forth, but checked his thunder in mid-volley, for he meant not to destroy, but root them out of heaven. The overthrown he raised, and as a herd of goats or timorous flock together thronged, drove them before him, thunderstruck, pursued with terrors and with furies to the bounds and crystal wall of heaven, which, opening wide, rolled inward, and a spacious gap disclosed into the wasteful deep. The monstrous sight struck them with horror backward, but far worse urged them behind. Headlong themselves they threw down from the verge of heaven. Eternal wrath burnt after them to the bottomless pit. Hell heard the insufferable noise. Hell saw heaven ruining from heaven, and would have fled affrighted. But strict fate had cast too deep her dark foundations, and too fast had bound. 9 days they fell. Confounded chaos roared, and felt tenfold confusion in their fall through his wild anarchy, so huge a rout encumbered him with ruin. Hell at last, yawning, received them whole, and on them closed. Hell, their fit habitation, fraught with fire unquenchable, the house of woe and pain. Disburdened heaven rejoiced, and soon repaired her mural breach, returning whence it rolled. Sole victor from the expulsion of his foes, Messiah his triumphal chariot turned. To meet him all his saints, who silent stood, eye-witnesses of his almighty acts, with jubilee advanced. And, as they went, shaded with branching palm, each order bright, sung triumph, and him sung victorious King, Son, Heir and Lord, to him dominion given, worthiest to reign. He, celebrated, rode triumphant through mid-heaven into the courts and temple of his mighty Father throned on high, who into glory him received, where now he sits at the right hand of bliss. Thus, measuring things in heaven by things on earth, at thy request, and that thou mayst beware by what is past, to thee I have revealed what might have else to human race been hid. The discord which befell, and war in heaven among the angelic powers, and the deep fall of those too high aspiring who rebelled with Satan. He, who envies now thy state, who now is plotting how he may seduce thee also from obedience, that with him bereaved of happiness thou mayst partake his punishment, eternal misery, which would be all his solace and revenge, as a despite done against the Most High, thee wants to gain companion of his woe. But listen not to his temptations. Warn thy weaker. Let it profit thee to have heard, by terrible example, the reward of disobedience. Firm they might have stood, yet fell. Remember, and fear to transgress. Book 7, The Argument. Raphael, at the request of Adam, relates how and wherefore this world was first created. That God, after the expelling of Satan and his angels out of heaven, declared his pleasure to create another world and other creatures to dwell therein. Sends his Son with glory and attendance of angels to perform the work of creation in 6 days. The angels celebrate with hymns the performance thereof, and his reascension into heaven. Book 7. Descend from heaven, Urania, by that name, if rightly thou art called, whose voice divine following, above the Olympian hill I saw, above the flight of Pegasean wing. The meaning, not the name, I call, for thou, nor of the Muses 9, nor on the top of old Olympus dwellest, but heavenly born before the hills appeared or fountain flowed, thou with eternal wisdom didst converse, wisdom thy sister, and with her didst play in presence of the Almighty Father, pleased with thy celestial song. Upled by thee into the heaven of heavens I have presumed, an earthly guest, and drawn imperial air, thy tempering. With like safety, guided down, return me to my native element. lest from this flying steed unreined, as once Bellerophon, though from a lower clime, dismounted on the alien field I fall, erroneous there to wander and forlorn. Half yet remains unsung, but narrower bound within the visible diurnal sphere, standing on earth, not wrapped above the pole, more safe I sing with mortal voice, unchanged to hoarse or mute, though fallen on evil days though fallen, and evil tongues. In darkness, and with dangers compassed round, and solitude, yet not alone, while thou visit'st my slumbers nightly, or when morn purples the east, still govern thou my song, Urania, and fit audience find, though few. But drive far off the barbarous dissonance of Bacchus and his revellers, the race of that wild rout that tore the Thracian bard in Rhodope, where woods and rocks had ears to rapture, till the savage clamour drowned both harp and voice. Nor could the muse defend her son. So fail not thou, who thee implores, for thou art heavenly, she an empty dream. Say, goddess, what ensued when Raphael, the affable archangel, had forewarned Adam by dire example to beware apostasy, by what befell in heaven to those apostates, lest the like befall in paradise to Adam or his race, charged not to touch the interdicted tree, if they transgress, and slight that sole command so easily obeyed amid the choice of all tastes else to please their appetite, though wandering. He with his consorted Eve the story heard, attentive, and was filled with admiration and deep mused to hear of things so high and strange, things to their thoughts so imaginable as hate in heaven, and war so near the peace of God in bliss with such confusion. But the evil soon driven back redounded as a flood on those from whom it sprung, impossible to mix with blessedness. Whence Adam soon repealed the doubts that in his heart arose, and now led on, yet sinless, with desire to know what nearer might concern him, how this world of heaven and earth conspicuous first began, when and whereof created, for what cause, what within Eden or without was done before his memory, as one whose drouth yet scarce allayed still eyes the current stream whose liquid murmur heard new thirst excites, proceeded thus to ask his heavenly guest. Great things, and full of wonder in our ears, far differing from this world thou hast revealed, divine interpreter, by favour sent down from the Empyrean to forewarn us timely of what might else have been our loss unknown, which human knowledge could not reach, for which to the infinitely good we owe immortal thanks, and his admonishment receive with solemn purpose to observe immutably his sovereign will, the end of what we are. But since thou hast vouchsafed gently for our instruction to impart things above earthly thought, which yet concerned our knowing as to highest wisdom seemed, deign to descend now lower, and relate what may no less perhaps avail us known. How first began this heaven which we behold, distant so high, with moving fires adorned innumerable, and this which yields or fills all space, the ambient air, wide interfused, embracing round this florid earth? What cause moved the Creator, in his holy rest through all eternity, so late to build in chaos, and the work begun how soon absolved? If unforbid thou mayest unfold what we, not to explore the secrets, ask of his eternal empire, but the more to magnify his works, the more we know. And the great light of day yet wants to run much of his race through steep suspense in heaven, held by thy voice, thy potent voice, he hears, and longer will delay to hear thee tell his generation, and the rising birth of nature from the unapparent deep. Or if the star of evening and the moon haste to thy audience, night with her will bring silence, and sleep, listening to thee, will watch. Or we can bid his absence till thy song end, and dismiss thee ere the morning shine. Thus Adam his illustrious guest besought, and thus the godlike angel answered mild. This also thy request, with caution asked, obtain. Though to recount almighty works, what words or tongue of seraph can suffice, or heart of man suffice, to comprehend. Yet what thou canst attain, which best may serve to glorify the Maker and infer thee also happier, shall not be withheld thy hearing. Such commission from above I have received to answer thy desire of knowledge within bounds. Beyond, abstain to ask. Nor let thine own inventions hope things not revealed, which the invisible King, only omniscient, hath suppressed in night, to none communicable in earth or heaven. Enough is left besides to search and know. But knowledge is as food, and needs no less her temperance over appetite, to know in measure what the mind may well contain. Oppresses else with surfeit, and soon turns wisdom to folly, as nourishment to wind. Know then, that after Lucifer from heaven, so call him, brighter once amidst the host of angels than that star the stars among, fell with his flaming legions through the deep into his place, and the great sun returned victorious with his saints, the omnipotent, eternal Father from his throne beheld their multitude, and to his Son thus spake. At least our envious foe hath failed, who thought all like himself rebellious, by whose aid this inaccessible high strength, the seat of deity supreme, us dispossessed, he trusted to have seized, and into fraud drew many, whom their place knows here no more. Yet far the greater part have kept, I see, their station. Heaven, yet populous, retains numbers sufficient to possess her realms, though wide, and this high temple to frequent, with ministeries due, and solemn rites. But, lest his heart exalt him in the harm already done to have dispeopled heaven, my damage fondly deemed, I can repair that detriment, if such it be to lose self-lost, and in a moment will create another world, out of one man a race of men innumerable there to dwell, not here, till by degrees of merit raised they open to themselves at length the way up hither, under long obedience tried, and earth be changed to heaven, and heaven to earth, one kingdom, joy, and union without end. Meanwhile inhabit lax, ye powers of heaven, and thou my word, begotten Son, by thee this I perform. Speak thou, and be it done. My overshadowing spirit and might with thee I send along, ride forth, and bid the deep within appointed bounds be heaven and earth. Boundless the deep, because I am, who fill infinitude, nor vacuous the space. Though I, uncircumscribed myself, retire, and put not forth my goodness which is free to act or not, necessity and chance approach not me, and what I will is fate. So spake the Almighty, and to what he spake, his word the filial Godhead gave effect. Immediate are the acts of God, more swift than time or motion, but to human ears cannot without process of speech be told, so told as earthly notion can receive. Great triumph and rejoicing was in heaven, when such was heard declared the Almighty's will. Glory they sung to the Most High, good will to future men, and in their dwellings peace. Glory to him, whose just avenging ire had driven out the ungodly from his sight, and the habitations of the just. To him glory and praise, whose wisdom had ordained good out of evil to create, instead of spirits malign, a better race to bring into their vacant room, and thence diffuse his good to worlds and ages infinite. So sang the hierarchies. Meanwhile the Son, on his great expedition now appeared, girt with omnipotence, with radiance crowned of majesty divine, sapience and love immense, and all his Father in him shone. About his chariot numberless were poured cherub and seraph, potentates and thrones and virtues, winged spirits and chariots winged from the armoury of God, where stand of old myriads between two brazen mountains lodged against a solemn day, harnessed at hand, celestial equipage. And now came forth spontaneous, for within them spirit lived, attendant on their Lord. Heaven opened wide her ever-during gates, harmonious sound on golden hinges moving, to let forth the King of Glory, in his powerful word and spirit, coming to create new worlds. On heavenly ground they stood, and from the shore they viewed the vast immeasurable abyss, outrageous as a sea, dark, wasteful, wild, up from the bottom turned by furious winds and surging waves, as mountains to assault heaven's height, and with the centre mix the pole. "Silence, ye troubled waves, and thou deep, peace," said then the omnific word. "Your discord end." Nor stayed, but on the wings of cherubim, uplifted in paternal glory, rode far into chaos and the world unborn. For chaos heard his voice, him all his train, followed in bright procession to behold creation and the wonders of his might. Then stayed the fervid wheels, and in his hand he took the golden compasses, prepared in God's eternal store, to circumscribe this universe and all created things. One foot he centred, and the other turned round through the vast profundity obscure, and said, "Thus far extend, thus far thy bounds, this be thy just circumference, O world." Thus God, the heaven created, thus the earth, matter, unformed and void. Darkness profound covered the abyss. But on the watery calm his brooding wings the Spirit of God outspread, and vital virtue infused and vital warmth throughout the fluid mass. But downward purged the black Tartaria's cold infernal dregs adverse to life, then founded, then conglobed, like things to like, the rest to several place disparted, and between spun out the air, and earth, self-balanced, on her centre hung. "Let there be light," said God. And forthwith light ethereal, first of things, quintessence pure, sprung from the deep, and from her native east to journey through the airy gloom began, sphered in a radiant cloud, for yet the sun was not. She, in a cloudy tabernacle, sojourned the while. God saw the light was good, and light from darkness by the hemisphere divided. Light, the day, and darkness, night, he named. Thus was the first day, even and morn, nor passed uncelebrated, nor unsung by the celestial choirs when orient light exhaling first from darkness they beheld. Birthday of heaven and earth, with joy and shout, the hollow universal orb they filled, and touched their golden harps, and hymning praised God and his works. Creator him they sung, both when first evening was, and when first morn. Again God said, "Let there be firmament amid the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, expanse of liquid, pure, transparent, elemental air, diffused in circuit to the uttermost convex of this great round, partition firm and sure, the waters underneath from those above dividing. For as earth, so he the world, built on circumfluous waters calm in wide crystalline ocean, and the loud misrule of chaos far removed, lest fierce extremes contiguous might distemper the whole frame. And heaven he named the firmament. So even and morning chorus sung the second day. The earth was formed, but in the womb as yet of waters, embryon, immature involved, appeared not. Over all the face of earth main ocean flowed, not idle, but with warm, prolific humour, softening all her globe, fermented the great mother to conceive, satiate with genial moisture. When God said, "Be gathered now, ye waters under heaven, into one place, and let dry land appear," immediately the mountains huge appear emergent, and their broad bare backs upheave into the clouds, their tops ascend the sky, so high as heaved the tumid hills, so low down sunk a hollow bottom, broad and deep, capacious bed of waters. Thither they hasted with glad precipitance, uprolled as drops on dust conglobing from the dry, part rising crystal wall or ridge direct for haste, such flight the great command impressed on the swift floods. As armies at the call of trumpet, for of armies thou hast heard, troop to their standard, so the watery throng, wave rolling after wave, where way they found, if steep with torrent rapture, if through plain soft ebbing. Nor withstood them rock or hill, but they, or underground or circuit wide with serpent error wandering, found their way, and on the washy ooze deep channels wore, easy ere God had bid the ground be dry, all but within those banks where rivers now stream, and perpetual draw their humid train. The dry land, earth, and the great receptacle of congregated waters he called seas, and saw that it was good, and said, Let the earth put forth the verdant grass, herb yielding seed, and fruit tree yielding fruit after her kind, whose seed is in herself upon the earth. He scarce had said, when the bare earth, till then desert and bare, unsightly, unadorned, brought forth the tender grass, whose verdure clad her universal face with pleasant green. Then herbs of every leaf, that sudden flowered, opening their various colours, and made gay her bosom, smelling sweet. And these scarce blown, forth flourished thick the clustering vine, forth crept the swelling gourd, up stood the corny reed embattled in her field, and the humble shrub and bush with frizzled hair implicit. Last rose, as in dance, the stately trees, and spread their branches hung with copious fruit, or gemmed their blossoms. With high woods the hills were crowned, with tufts the valleys, and each fountain side, with borders along the rivers, that earth now seemed like to heaven, a seat where gods might dwell, or wander with delight, and love to haunt her sacred shades. Though God had yet not reigned upon the earth, and man to till the ground none was. But from the earth a dewy mist went up, and watered all the ground, and each plant of the field, which, ere it was in the earth, God made, and every herb before it grew on the green stem. God saw that it was good. So even and morn recorded the third day. Again the Almighty spake, Let there be lights high in the expanse of heaven to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, and for days, and circling years, and let them be for lights, as I ordain their office in the firmament of heaven, to give light on the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, great for their use to man, the greater to have rule by day, the less by night altern, and made the stars, and set them in the firmament of heaven to illuminate the earth, and rule the day in their vicissitude, and rule the night, and light from darkness to divide. God saw, surveying his great work, that it was good. For of celestial bodies, first the sun, a mighty sphere he framed, unlightsome first, though of ethereal mould. Then formed the moon globose, and every magnitude of stars, and sowed with stars the heaven thick as a field. Of light by far the greater part he took, transplanted from her cloudy shrine, and placed in the sun's orb, made porous to receive and drink the liquid light. Firm to retain her gathered beams, great palace now of light. Hither, as to their fountain, other stars repairing, in their golden urns draw light, and hence the morning planet gilds her horns. By tincture or reflection they augment their small peculiar, though from human sight so far remote, with diminution seen. First in his east the glorious lamp was seen, regent of day, and all the horizon round invested with bright rays, jocund to run his longitude through heaven's high road. The grey dawn, and the Pleiades before him danced, shedding sweet influence. Less bright the moon, but opposite in levelled west was set, his mirror with full face borrowing her light from him. For other light she needed none in that aspect, and still that distance keeps till night. Then in the east her turn she shines, revolved on heaven's great axle, and her reign with 1,000 lesser lights dividual holds, with 1,000 stars that then appeared spangling the hemisphere. Then first adorned with their bright luminaries that set and rose, glad evening and glad morn crowned the 4th day. And God said, Let the waters generate reptile with spawn abundant, living soul, and let fowl fly above the earth with wings displayed on the open firmament of heaven. And God created the great whales, and each soul living, each that crept, which plenteously the waters generated by their kinds. And every bird of wing after his kind, and saw that it was good, and blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful, multiply, and in the seas and lakes and running streams the waters fill, and let the fowl be multiplied on the earth." Forthwith the sounds and seas, each creek and bay, with fry innumerable swarm, and shoals of fish that with their fins and shining scales glide under the green wave, in schools that oft bank the mid-sea, part single or with mate, graze the seaweed their pasture, and through groves of coral stray, or, sporting with quick glance, show to the sun their waved coats dropped with gold, or in their pearly shells at ease attend moist nutriment, or under rocks their food in jointed armour watch. On smooth the seal and bended dolphins play, part huge of bulk, wallowing unwieldy, enormous in their gait, tempest the ocean. There Leviathan, hugest of living creatures, on the deep stretched like a promontory, sleeps or swims, and seems a moving land, and at his gills draws in, and at his trunk spouts out a sea. Meanwhile the tepid caves and fens and shores, their brood as numerous hatch from the egg that soon, bursting with kindly rupture, forth disclosed their callow young. But feathered soon, and fledged they summed their pens, and soaring the air sublime with clang despised the ground, under a cloud in prospect. There the eagle and the stork on cliffs and cedar tops their eyries build. Part loosely wing the region, part, more wise in common, ranged in figure, wedge their way, intelligent of seasons, and set forth their airy caravan, high over seas flying and over lands, with mutual wing easing their flight. So steers the prudent crane her annual voyage, borne on winds. The air floats as they pass, fanned with unnumbered plumes. From branch to branch the smaller birds with song solaced the woods, and spread their painted wings till even. Nor then the solemn nightingale ceased warbling, but all night tuned her soft lays. Others, on silver lakes and rivers, bathed their downy breast. The swan, with arched neck, between her white wings mantling proudly, rose her state with oary feet. Yet oft they quit the dank, and rising on stiff pennons tower the mid-aerial sky. Others on ground walked firm, the crested cock, whose clarion sounds the silent hours, and the other whose gay train adorns him, coloured with the florid hue of rainbows and starry eyes. The waters thus, with fish replenished, and the air with fowl, evening and morn solemnized the 5th day. The 6th, and of creation last, arose with evening harps and matin, when God said, "Let the earth bring forth soul living in her kind, cattle, and creeping things and beast of the earth, each in their kind." The earth obeyed, and straight opening her fertile womb, teemed at a birth innumerous living creatures, perfect forms, limbed and full-grown. Out of the ground uprose, as from his lair, the wild beast where he wons in forest wild, in thicket, brake, or den. Among the trees in pairs they rose, they walked, the cattle in the fields and meadows green. Those rare and solitary, these in flocks pasturing at once, and in broad herds upsprung. The grassy clods, now carved, now half appeared the tawny lion, pawing to get free his hinder parts, then springs as broke from bonds, and rampant shakes his brinded mane. The ounce, the leopard, and the tiger, as the mole, rising, the crumbled earth above them threw in hillocks. The swift stag from underground bore up his branching head. Scarce from his mould, behemoth, biggest born of earth, upheaved his vastness, fleeced the flocks, and bleating rose as plants, ambiguous between sea and land the river horse and scaly crocodile. At once came forth whatever creeps the ground, insect or worm. Those waved their limmer fans for wings, and smallest lineaments exact in all the liveries decked of summer's pride, with spots of gold and purple, azure and green. These, as a line, their long dimension drew, streaking the ground with sinuous trace, not all minims of nature, some of serpent kind, wondrous in length and corpulence, involved their snaky folds and added wings. First crept the parsimonious emmet, provident of future, in small room large heart enclosed, pattern of just equality perhaps hereafter, joined in her popular tribes of commonality. Swarming next appeared the female bee, that feeds her husband drone deliciously, and builds her waxen cells with honey stored. The rest are numberless, and thou their natures knowest, and gavest them names, needless to thee repeated. Nor unknown the serpent, subtlest beast of all the field, of huge extent sometimes, with brazen eyes and hairy mane terrific, though to thee not noxious, but obedient at thy call. Now heaven in all her glory shone, and rolled her motions, as the great first mover's hand first wheeled their course. Earth in her rich attire consummate, lovely smiled. Air, water, earth, by fowl, fish, beast was flown, was swum, was walked, frequent. And of the 6th day yet remained. There wanted yet the master work, the end of all yet done, a creature who, not prone and brute as other creatures, but endued with sanctity of reason, might erect his stature, and upright with front serene govern the rest, self-knowing. And from thence, magnanimous to correspond with heaven, but grateful to acknowledge whence his good descends, thither with heart and voice and eyes directed in devotion, to adore and worship God supreme, who made him chief of all his works. Therefore the omnipotent eternal Father, for where is not he present, thus to his Son audibly spake. Let us make now man in our image, man in our similitude, and let them rule over the fish and fowl of sea and air, beast of the field, and over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps the ground. This said, he formed thee, Adam. Thee, O man, dust of the ground, and in thy nostrils breathed the breath of life. In his own image he created thee, and the image of God express, and thou becamest a living soul. Male he created thee, but thy consort female for race. Then blessed mankind, and said, Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Subdue it, and throughout dominion hold over fish of the sea and fowl of the air, and every living thing that moves on the earth. Wherever thus created, for no place is yet distinct by name, thence, as thou knowest, he brought thee into this delicious grove, this garden planted with the trees of God, delectable both to behold and taste. And freely all their pleasant fruit for food gave thee. All sorts are here that all the earth yields, variety without end. But of the tree which tasted works knowledge of good and evil, thou mayest not. In the day thou eatst, thou diest. Death is the penalty imposed. Beware, and govern well thy appetite, lest sin surprise thee and her black attendant, death. Here finished he, and all that he had made viewed, and behold all was entirely good. So even and morn accomplished the 6th day. Yet not till the Creator from his work desisting, though unwearied, up returned, up to the heaven of heavens, his high abode, thence to behold this new created world, the addition of his empire, how it showed in prospect from his throne, how good, how fair, answering his great idea. Up he rode, followed with acclamation and the sound symphonious of 10,000 harps that tuned angelic harmonies. The earth, the air, resounded. Thou rememberest, for thou heardst. The heavens and all the constellations rung, the planets in their station listening stood, while the bright pomp ascended jubilant. Open, ye everlasting gates, they sung. Open, ye heavens, your living doors. Let in the great Creator from his work returned magnificent, his 6 days' work, a world. Open, and henceforth oft. For God will deign to visit oft the dwellings of just men, delighted, and with frequent intercourse thither will send his winged messengers on errands of supernal grace. So sung the glorious train ascending. He through heaven, that opened wide her blazing portals, led to God's eternal house direct the way, a broad and ample road, whose dust is gold and pavement stars, as stars do thee appear seen in the galaxy, that Milky Way, which nightly, as a circling zone, thou seest powdered with stars. And now on earth the 7th evening arose in Eden, for the sun was set, and twilight from the east came on, forerunning night. When at the holy mount of heaven's high-seated top, the imperial throne of Godhead, fixed for ever firm and sure, the filial power arrived, and sat him down with his great Father, for he also went invisible, yet stayed, such privilege hath omnipresence, and the work ordained, author and end of all things. And from work now resting, blessed and hallowed the 7th day, as resting on that day from all his work, but not in silence wholly kept. The harp had work, and rested not. The solemn pipe and dulcimer, all organs of sweet stop. All sounds on fret by string or golden wire, tempered soft tunings, intermixed with voice choral or unison. Of incense clouds, fuming from golden censers, hid the mount. Creation and the 6 days' acts they sung. Great are thy works, Jehovah, infinite thy power. What thought can measure thee, or tongue relate thee? Greater now in thy return than from the giant angels. Thee that day thy thunders magnified, but to create is greater than created to destroy. Who can impair thee, mighty King, or bound thy empire? Easily the proud attempt of spirits apostate and their counsels vain thou hast repelled, while impiously they thought thee to diminish, and from thee withdraw the number of thy worshippers. Who seeks to lessen thee against his purpose serves to manifest the more thy might. His evil thou usest, and from thence createst more good. Witness this new-made world, another heaven from heaven gate not far, founded in view on the clear higher line, the glassy sea, of amplitude almost immense, with stars numerous, and every star perhaps a world of destined habitation. But thou knowest their seasons. Among these the seat of men, earth with her nether oceans circumfused, their pleasant dwelling place. Thrice happy men, and sons of men, whom God hath thus advanced, created in his image there to dwell and worship him, and in reward to rule over his works on earth, in sea or air, and multiply a race of worshippers, holy and just. Thrice happy, if they know their happiness, and persevere upright. So sung they, and the Empyrean rung with hallelujahs. Thus was Sabbath kept. And thy request, think now fulfilled, that asked how first this world and face of things began, and what before thy memory was done from the beginning, that posterity, informed by thee, might know. If else thou seekest aught, not surpassing human measure, say.